Assalamualaikum. Today we'll be covering the first chapter in MDCAT biology, which is acellular life. Acellular life hoti kya hai? It is a life form that is existing without cellular structure. मतलब cellular structure में आपके पास जो basic आपने पढ़ा होगा cell का structure with cell membranes and organelles etc. वो उसके पास होता नहीं है. इसके examples viruses and viroids हैं. Okay. So viruses होते क्या हैं? We define them as particles of nucleic acids with a protein coating. The protein coating is called a capsid. यहाँ आपको तस्वीर में नजर भी आ रहा होगा. Let me select the red pen. Yeah, ठीक है. ये जो आपके पास hexagonal इन्होंने दिखाई हुई है, this is a capsid, which is your protein coating. ये envelope है और हम बाद में पढ़ेंगे भी कि एनवेलप हर वायरस में प्रेजेंट नहीं होती, कुछ वायरसेस में प्रेजेंट होती है. एंड बीच में हमारे पास न्यूक्लिक एसिड है. ये न्यूक्लिक एसिड आरएनए भी हो सकता है या डीएनए हो सकता है. एंड वी यूजुअली हैव सम कोर प्रोटीन्स एज वेल. ठीक है. सो पार्टिकल्स ऑफ न्यूक्लिक एसिड्स विद अ प्रोटीन कोटिंग. These are on the borderline of living and non-living things. Why is that? Because हम पढ़ेंगे कि इसकी कुछ characteristics ऐसी हैं जो living है और कुछ non-living है. For example, outside of its host cell, it is inert, it is non-living. लेकिन once inside the host cell, it can reproduce, it can replicate, it has an infectious nature. So inside the host cell that it is attacking, it is a living thing, but outside it's बिल्कुल inert. ठीक है. So we don't classify this in any kingdom. We call them obligate intracellular parasites. Let's break this down. Obligate means that it is completely host dependent. It cannot survive outside of its host. Intracellular means that it is inside the cell. And parasites, matlab like it has a parasitic nature, infectious nature. It takes control and advantage of the host cell. So इससे हमें पता है कि viruses are host specific and they cannot survive outside of their hosts. So they cannot survive on any artificial medium, just glassware ho gaya, just like agar jelly, any like artificial medium. It cannot survive there. And this is because viruses lack biosynthetic machinery. मतलब जो आपके ribosomes होते हैं, organelles होते हैं, they like structures in a cell that allow it to live essentially. ठीक है? Viruses are very, very small. Their size ranges from 20 nanometers to 250 nanometers. And obviously, you cannot see this with a light microscope. In comparison to bacteria, they are 10 to 1000 times smaller. ठीक है? And this is a very important MCQ point. Okay, they are very resistant to broad range antibiotics, just not tetracycline. And in general, please yaad rakhein कि antibiotics are used against bacteria and viruses and bacteria are not the same thing. So generally, अगर आप viral disease के patient को antibiotics देंगे कोई आपको effect नहीं नजर आएगा. The study of viruses is called virology and the scientist who is studying these viruses is called a virologist. और हम काफी virologists को study भी करेंगे in the later sections. They are not capable of autopoiesis, which is the ability to reproduce. They cannot reproduce without a host. तो इसलिए हम बोलते हैं कि they're not capable of autopoiesis without a host. And they do not follow cell theory. ठीक है? These are some general points that you should remember. Living characteristics and non-living characteristics. अब living में we have the first one which is varieties and strains. इनकी काफ़ी होती हैं. We're gonna learn कि genomes काफ़ी होते हैं. एक ही virus की multiple types हो सकती हैं. For example, hepatitis A, B, C, D. So they have multiple varieties and strains. Mutation is possible because of the fact कि इनके पास genetic material होता है. Right? We have like RNA या DNA. So इसके अंदर mutations possible हैं. Hence, this is a living characteristic. They can reproduce obviously once inside the host cell. They can be destroyed by UV light because UV light destroys the genome of the virus. And they have a parasitic and infectious nature. ठीक है? Non-living characteristics. They're acellular या non-cellular, कोई cellular structure नहीं है इनके पास. They can be crystallized, and we're gonna learn कि which scientist was the first one to crystallize these viruses. They have no metabolism, no excretion, they cannot respire, and outside of the host, they're inert particles. ठीक है? They have no coenzyme and enzyme system, and they have an ambivalent या fluctuating nature. ठीक है? Just now, for example, the flu virus, it keeps changing its structure, it keeps changing its genome या genetic qualities, ताकि we can't really like have a solid vaccine against it. So they have like fluctuating natures. Okay, classification is based on these 5 points: host, genome, structure, and mode of replication. होस्ट में हमारे पास एनिमल वायरसेस भी होते हैं, प्लांट वायरसेस भी होते हैं, बैक्टीरिया वायरसेस which we call bacteriophages. Genome में we're gonna study the Baltimore classification. शेप में भी काफ़ी आ जाती हैं like rod, helical, spherical, etc. Structure जिसमें आपके पास size भी आ जाता है, or obviously general structure like capsid, and mode of replication. And please remember that viruses are not classified based on things like their cell membrane, yeah, their like envelope, things like that, yeah, mode of transmission. They aren't classified based on these qualities, and this is a very common MCQ trap. Okay, Baltimore classification. जो आपका DNA और RNA होता है, obviously the virus can only have one of these. Lekin DNA comes in two forms, which is double-stranded DNA, which we're going to call dsDNA, या ssDNA, which is single-stranded DNA. ठीक है? And RNA as well comes in different forms: single-stranded RNA, double-stranded RNA, or single-stranded RNA. Maybe we have positive strands and negative strands. So we have many different types. ठीक है? Positive SS का क्या मतलब है? Which is positive sense single strand. इसका मतलब है कि जो genome है, it acts as the mRNA. तो जब virus का genome enters the host cell, the proteins can be made directly using the host ribosomes, because obviously virus के तो अपने कोई ribosomes नहीं है. लेकिन जो negative ssRNA है, it acts as a template to make the mRNA. ठीक है? So पहले टेम्पलेट से mRNA बनता है और फिर उस mRNA से प्रोटीन्स बनती हैं. और बाद में हम रेट्रोवायरसेस भी देखेंगे, which basically have an enzyme called reverse transcriptase, जिससे जो RNA जीनोम है वो DNA में कन्वर्ट होता है और वो DNA होस्ट सेल के जीनोम के साथ इंटीग्रेट हो जाता है. But we're gonna learn this later under HIV. History. So the origin of the word itself, virus, is very interesting. सबसे पहले it was called disease या death at the time of Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch. Then they were referred to as venom, which is a Latin word for poisonous fluid. फिर it was eventually narrowed down to virus. At the time of Edward Jenner, basically the first vaccination was made by him. So the first infectious disease against which vaccination was used was a viral disease. And this was pox virus. हम अभी पढ़ने वाले हैं. ठीक है? And the first animal virus that was discovered was a virus that causes foot and mouth disease in animals. And this was discovered in 1898, whereas the first human virus discovered was yellow fever in 1901. Viruses have no fossil record. Edward Jenner, 1796 में, he basically took a cowpox lesion, मतलब एक cow जिसको cowpox हुई हुई थी, उस pox से उसने ज़रा सा pus समझो extract की और वो introduce की एक 8-year-old boy पे. ठीक है? 6 weeks बाद उसी same boy को pus from a smallpox के victim के साथ introduce किया. ठीक है? अब ये दोनों क्या थे? Pox viruses. तो जो बॉडी ऑफ द 8-year-old बॉय की जो इम्यूनिटी फॉर्म हुई हुई थी वो इन दोनों के अगेंस्ट ऑटोमेटिकली हो गई थी, तो उसकी वजह से द बॉय डिड नॉट गेट द डिजीज, एंड इसी मेथड से ही वैक्सीनेटेड 23 पीपल. ठीक है? अब काउ को हम बोलते हैं लैटिन में वैका. ठीक है? तो लुई पास्चर ने इससे वैक्सीनेशन का वर्ड बेसिकली डिराइव कर लिया, ठीक है। एंड ही ऑल्सो वर्कड विद चार्ल्स चैम्बरलिन ऑन द फिल्टर एक्सपेरिमेंट। अब चार्ल्स चैम्बरलिन ने 1884 में ये फिल्टर एक्सपेरिमेंट किया था, और इसमें ही फाउंड कि बैक्टीरिया कैन नॉट पास थ्रू अ पोर्सिलिन फिल्टर विच इज लाइक 100 to 1000 nanometers के साइज का, but the agent causing rabies can pass through it, ठीक है। मतलब if you have a solution जिसमें बैक्टीरिया है and you pass it through this porcelain filter, तो जो बैक्टीरिया है वो उस फिल्टर के थ्रू नहीं जाएगा। meanwhile the virus वाला जो solution है it will pass as is, ठीक है, और वायरस फिल्टर नहीं होगा। So now these agents were known as filterable viruses. इवानोस्की ने बेसिकली 1892 में टोबैको मोज़ेक वायरस मतलब टीएमवी के साथ एक्सपेरिमेंटेशन की थी, एंड उसने भी यही ढूंढा कि द एजेंट कॉजिंग दिस डिजीज इज फिल्टरेबल, ठीक है। दिस इज अ प्लांट डिजीज बेसिकली, इट इज रॉड शेप, ठीक है। एंड अगर अ सोल्यूशन हैज दिस वायरस एंड इट इज फिल्टर्ड, और फिर उस जो फिल्ट्रेट है आप उसे प्लांट्स के ऊपर स्प्रे करें, प्लांट्स को फिर भी टीएमवी डेवलप हो जाएगी। As we mentioned yellow fever, the person behind these experimentations was Walter Reed in 1901. Twart and D. Harrell basically identified similar things, लेकिन they discovered them independently, ठीक है। ट्वार्ट ने पहले in 1915 देखा कि बैक्टीरियल कॉलोनीज की फॉर सम रीजन एक एजेंट की वजह से लाइसिस हो रही है, मतलब रप्चर डिस्ट्रॉय हो रहे हैं, ठीक है। और अगर ये जो लाइज्ड कम्युनिटी है, ये जो डिस्ट्रॉयड कम्युनिटी है, इसे अगर आप एक कॉलोनी से दूसरी कॉलोनी में डालें, इवन अगर आपने उस कॉलोनी को काफ़ी वाटर में डाइल्यूट भी कर लिया है, अगर आप इस रप्चर्ड कॉलोनी को एक और कॉलोनी में इंट्रोड्यूस करेंगे, तो न्यू कॉलोनी के अंदर भी वायरस या वो जो पूरा अफेक्ट है ऑफ बैक्टीरियल ईटिंग वो इंट्रोड्यूस हो जाएगा। एंड ही फाउंड दैट हीटिंग किल्ड दिस लिटिक प्रॉपर्टी, ठीक है। In 1917, D. Harrell basically rediscovered these findings, and he was the one who came up with the term bacteriophage for bacteria eaters, ठीक है। And ये जो E. coli eaters है, E. coli is basically a bacteria ना। T.M. River in 1926 was the one who said gay viruses are obligate parasites. And Stanley in 1935 was the first person who crystallized a virus. He crystallized tobacco mosaic virus. And this was a major breakthrough as it showed that viruses are a simple chemical composition. Okay? Now we're going to study the structure. तो मैंने ऑलरेडी काफ़ी बात कर लिया, but basically we have the capsid, we have the nucleic acid under in the core, and we have core proteins which are your enzymes, ठीक है, in the core as well. और कोटिंग में आपके पास कैप्सिड आ जाता है और आपके पास एनवेलप आ जाता है which is only in a few viruses, not all, ठीक है। और एनवेलप का जो आपको पता होना चाहिए, envelope is the thing that makes a virus short lived, because these envelopes are very sensitive to chemical changes, pH changes, temperature changes. तो उसकी वजह से the viruses that are enveloped are very very short lived, ठीक है। And these envelopes are derived from host. Basically अगर ये एक सेल में है this virus, ठीक है, ये host cell है जिसमें वो replicate कर रहे हैं and everything. अब now this virus wants to leave the cell, ठीक है। when it is leaving the cell, वो host cell के जो cell membrane है ना उसको जरा सा bud off करेगा basically when it's leaving, or it will surround itself with basically the host membrane when it is leaving, ठीक है। So we call them lipoproteins in nature, they are host derived. And if we talk about the capsid is formed from subunits called capsomeres, ठीक है, and these capsomeres are specific to each virus. For example, in herpes virus, you will see 162 capsomeres, 252 in adenovirus, 16 in ambidenzovirus, and 32 in poliovirus. The largest viruses that you will see are 250 nanometers, which are the pox viruses, and the smallest viruses are 20 nanometers, which are parvovirus. अब ये three terms are similar, लेकिन it is important that you keep them distinct. ठीक है? Virions are basically fully assembled and mature viruses. मतलब इनके पास nucleic acid भी है और इनके पास protein coat भी है. They are full nucleocapsid. मतलब nucleic acid plus capsid. Viroids, on the other hand, are single-stranded RNA, basically circular pieces of single-stranded RNA. These are infectious agents, लेकिन इनके पास कोई protein coating नहीं है. And in fact, they are very long-lived as well. ठीक है? Prions are just abnormally folded proteins that cause infection. मतलब इनके पास कोई nucleic acid नहीं है. The information is transferred through the protein itself. ठीक है? And prions cause diseases like mad cow's disease. ठीक है? Okay. So continuing, we've already discussed the envelope, which is short-lived because of its sensitivity to pH, temperature changes, and another thing is that envelope can be covered with glycoprotein spikes. ठीक है? And these are for the recognition of host cell. और ये मैं आपको दिखा भी देती हूँ. These are the glycoprotein spikes. And I've discussed Kyrgyzstan retroviruses and hepatitis B viruses have reverse transcriptase in their core proteins, which basically converts the single-stranded RNA to double-stranded DNA. Shapes काफ़ी हो सकती हैं viruses की, and the shape is determined by the capsid, not the envelope. ठीक है? And they can be polyhedron in nature, मतलब many sides. They can be helical, icosahedral, which basically means 20 faces. And bacteriophages have a complex shape, which I can show you right here. Basically, इनका head होता है, polyhedral head या icosahedral head, and they have a helical tail, and this tail is contractile. ये आपके पास helical viruses आ गए, जिस tobacco mosaic virus है. We have polyhedral viruses like adenovirus. We have spherical viruses like influenza virus. So there's many different shapes that you will find of viruses. Some common animal viruses that are important that you should know about are now going to be listed. लेकिन please remember there's many other examples in every single book. So जो आपके board की books है, especially give them a read through and note down any extra viruses that you might see. This is just a general list. Smallpox में you will see their genome as double-stranded DNA, and it is an enveloped virus. As we've discussed, it is the largest known virus, और इसके against जो vaccine बनी थी was basically the first vaccine that was ever made. ठीक है? By Edward Jenner. It is transmitted by direct contact with the patient या airborne, मतलब like sneezes या coughs के through जो like air में particles हैं. They appear as fluid-filled vesicles जो फिर pustules form होते हैं और फिर pox बन जाती हैं, which are वो जो like दाने या उस तरह जो इनकी characteristic shape है. In the 12th century in China, there was an epidemic of smallpox. लेकिन अब, ever since like 1980, it has been eradicated from the world thanks to the vaccine that was made available. Herpes simplex type 1 virus is causing oral herpes basically. It is caused by HSV1, which is a dsDNA enveloped virus. It is transmitted by direct oral contact with like the vascular lesions जो basically form होती है ना, उनके साथ direct contact अगर हो, which basically form on the epithelial layers of ectoderm, मतलब जो आपकी skin sites हैं, lips हो गए for example. They appear pink in color and they appear as blisters, and before these blisters form you may experience some itching या burning, and they never cross the body's midline. मतलब एक, let's draw a poorly shaped person here. Okay, they will not cross the body's midline. एक ही side of the body पे रहेंगी. The sores last 7 to 10 days. It is a naturally occurring disease, unfortunately, so the only prevention we can take is avoiding contact since there is no vaccine for it. लेकिन अगर हो जाए तो फिर there are antiviral treatments available. Type 2 of this virus is genital herpes. Basically इससे cause होता है. Caused by HSV2. It is a dsDNA, double-stranded DNA enveloped virus, which is transmitted via sexual contact. ठीक है? They appear as warty lesions, sores, ulcers, जिस तरह हम छाले बोलते हैं, on the genitalia areas, and they affect the central nervous system, and they can affect the eyes of infants as well. ठीक है? And before these lesions appear, you might get a tingling, a burning sensation. Again, the only prevention is avoidance, and if contracted, then there are some antiviral treatments available. Influenza, very common. Orthomyxovirus is a family of viruses जिसमें से ये belong करती है. It is a negative ssRNA enveloped virus. So when it exits, the host cell doesn't die. Basically, जो enveloped viruses होते हैं, when they exit, the host typically does not die, क्योंकि when it enters, जो इसका envelope था ना virus का, it merges with the host cell की membrane, right? Like ये virus का genome अंदर चले गया, और ये जो इसका envelope था, वो host की membrane, like ये host की membrane है, और ये virus की envelope है. So since it merges ना, like host cell का membrane का size ज़रा सा बढ़ जाता है, and when this virus exits, तो वो ज़रा सी obviously membrane लेकर जाती है because it's an enveloped virus. तो फिर like net loss जो है cell membrane का वो ज़ीरो है, तो host cell का size भी नहीं ज़्यादा फ़र्क आ रहा. And दूसरा जो non-enveloped viruses होते हैं, the only way they can exit is through destroying the host cell. वो उसे पूरा lysis करते हैं और फिर exit करते हैं. So ये जो enveloped viruses होते हैं, when they exit, the host cell does not die. Hopefully that made sense. Influenza virus comes in many different shapes, like spherical, spaghetti-like long filaments, and it is transmitted by respiratory droplets, for example, by coughing and sneezing. The signature features you can say are fevers, headaches, runny noses, and इसका जो genome है, it is segmented with 8 RNA segments. इसकी वैक्सीन अवेलेबल है, और जो इसकी ट्रीटमेंट है वो सिम्टोमेटिक है, मतलब ईच सिम्टम को डायरेक्टली ट्रीट किया जाता है. फॉर एग्जांपल फीवर को सेपरेटली विद लाइक पिल्स, या लाइक बंदे का जब टेम्परेचर डाउन कर रहे होते हैं वो हेडेक के लिए एक स्पेसिफिक मेडिसिन, रनी नोज़ के लिए. सो बेसिकली हर सिम्टम को अलग ट्रीट किया जाता है. Mumps and measles are very similar because they're caused by like the same family of viruses, which is paramyxoviruses. They both are negative sense single-stranded RNA enveloped viruses, and they spread by respiratory droplets, again by sneezing or coughing. These are the symptoms of mumps: fever, headache, muscle pain, and this is the signature one, swelling of salivary glands, जो आपके basically jaws के पीछे glands होते हैं. It is a highly contagious virus. It's very widespread, seldom fatal, matlab rarely fatal, and 60% of adults are immune. ठीक है? Because and there is a vaccine available for it. और अगर contract हो जाए, then the treatment is supportive. Similarly, ये भी common होता है childhood में, and it develops immunity in the victim. There is also a vaccine available, and it is having a supportive treatment. लेकिन इसके जो symptoms हैं, they're separate. There's cough, red eyes, fever, body rashes, and runny nose. Okay, continuing, we have polio, which is also known as poliomyelitis, which is the inflammation of spinal cord. It belongs to the family Picornaviridae. ठीक है? Its genome is positive sense single strand RNA. It is a non-enveloped virus, It is the smallest known spherical virus, and please remember, I'm not saying smallest virus, I'm saying smallest spherical virus, because we know that the smallest virus is parvovirus. So its size is 30 nanometers. ठीक है? It is an enterovirus. Enterovirus is a group of viruses that occur in the GI tract, which the GI tract is like your digestion tract that starts from the mouth to the anus, and they spread from there to sometimes they spread from there to the central nervous system. So it is an enterovirus like hepatitis A, लेकिन unlike hepatitis A, it replicates faster. ठीक है? It is transmitted through the fecal-oral route, which, if you don't know what the fecal-oral route is, it's basically when someone infected with this virus, for example, polio, unki feces are like contaminated, basically, right? And if they contaminate water, and then that contaminated water is used by someone either for drinking purposes or for cooking purposes, तो फिर जिसने कुक किया है, जिसने बेसिकली ड्रिंक किया है, उनको भी फिर वायरस ऑब्वियसली ट्रांसफर हो जाएगा. So from the contaminated person's feces to like a healthy individual, that is basically the fecal-oral route. It infects humans and other primates. Primates जिसके अंदर chimpanzees, orangutans, gorillas, monkeys, etc. It causes unilateral paralysis, मतलब one side of the body, जैसा हमने midline describe की थी. It causes degeneration of nervous system because damage to motor neuron of spinal cord occurs. ठीक है? It is common in childhood, जिसकी वजह से जब बच्चों को up till the age of 5 orally drops दिए जाते हैं polio vaccine के. ठीक है? And because of this vaccine, it is at the verge of eradication. एंड अगर ये कंट्रैक्ट हो जाए तो वेल ट्रीटमेंट ज़्यादा तो आप कुछ नहीं कर सकते. फिजियोथेरेपी ओनली हेल्प्स टू अ सर्टेन एक्सटेंट, लेकिन मेनली प्लीज़ लाइक वैक्सीन के ऊपर फोकस रखें. देयर इज़ नॉट मच यू कैन डू वंस इट्स कंट्रैक्टेड. AIDS is caused by the HIV virus, which is a reverse transcriptase single-stranded RNA enveloped virus. It is a spherical virus, which is 100 nanometers in size. It belongs to the family of retroviruses. ठीक है? Retro जिनके अंदर basically reverse transcriptase होता है. It causes loss of immunity क्योंकि helper T cells affect हो जाते हैं. And although monkeys carry HIV virus, उनको कोई effect नहीं होता उसका. ठीक है? The way HIV is transferred is through body fluids, जिस तरह sexual body fluids हो गए या blood हो गया. लेकिन please remember, it is not transmitted by saliva, it is not transmitted by insects, yeah, it is not transmitted by anything like shaking hands with the victim, yeah, patient basically. ठीक है? It is only transmitted by like proper body fluids. ठीक है? And obviously this becomes a problem for healthcare workers. Because, for example, if a doctor is dealing with an HIV patient and they have to draw the blood of the HIV patient, तो फिर क्या पता while the doctor is holding the needle जिसके ऊपर वो infected blood है, someone like bumps into them जिसकी वजह से they prick themselves, और फिर suddenly the contaminated blood is in the doctor's bloodstream. So healthcare workers do face a bit of a risk. And iski only prevention is to just avoid the sexual contact, basically blood ke through. So blood transfusions ke pehle screen karna blood ko is a vital step. And if contracted, there are antiviral treatments available, and these are good to a certain extent क्योंकि अगर आप एक हेल्दी इंडिविजुअल को लें और अगर एक HIV इन्फेक्टेड पर्सन को लें और HIV इन्फेक्टेड पर्सन को आप ये ट्रीटमेंट दें, तो उनका लाइफ स्पैन और नॉर्मल पर्सन का लाइफ स्पैन बेसिकली इक्वल हो जाता है. लेकिन दिस ट्रीटमेंट इज़ एक्सपेंसिव एंड इट इज़ इनकन्वीनियंट क्योंकि आपको हर दिन गोली लेनी होती है इसकी. ठीक है? एंड ये ड्रग इज़ कॉल्ड AZT. Adenovirus is this polyhedral shaped virus. It has glycoprotein spikes on each end, as you can see ये glycoprotein spikes हैं, and it causes flu या common cold की तरह symptoms. These are some other minor viruses. There's gonna be more in your books, so please give them a read through. जिस तरह Rouse sarcoma हो गया, which causes cancer in animals, chicken pox, which causes chicken pox, लेकिन it's caused by varicella zoster, which is a dsDNA enveloped virus. Then we have reovirus, which causes diarrhea, and it is a dsDNA virus. Then we have rubella, which causes the rubella rash basically. And अगर like if अगर एक pregnant patient को ये contract हो जाए तो फिर it's possible कि उनकी since उनकी blood stream में आ गया है तो infant को भी transfer हो जाएगा, which we call congenital rubella syndrome. Next we have hepatitis, which is caused by viral infections, जिस तरह drugs हो गए, toxic agents हो गए, stuff like that. ठीक है? There's many different types of hepatitis. For example, hepatitis A, B, C, D, and E. They all have different agents, but their symptoms are going to be similar क्योंकि acute का एक certain set of symptoms हैं और वो repeat ही होती रहेंगी, like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, jaundice, fever. ये acute के हैं, और chronic के mainly liver cirrhosis है and dark urine है, basically liver damage. ठीक है? तो ये जहाँ भी मैंने acute लिखा हुआ है तो आप acute के copy कर लें और chronic के copy कर लें. Hepatitis A is called infectious hepatitis. It is caused by picornavirus HAV, which is an RNA non-enveloped virus. ठीक है, इसके acute symptoms होते हैं, and as I've described earlier, ये orophaecal route से transfer होता है. There is a vaccine available for this. उसके अलावा good hygiene practices से prevent हो सकता है, और अगर ये contract हो जाए तो इसकी supportive care होती है. Hepatitis B is serum hepatitis, उसका एक और नाम है. It is caused by HPV and it is a DNA enveloped virus. ये या तो acute हो सकता है या chronic हो सकता है. The transmission is through blood, sexual contact, या from mother to newborn via like breastfeeding, etc. इसकी vaccine available है. Avoidance भी obviously is a good prevention, and screening blood is a good prevention. And for treatments, there's alpha interferon treatments and antiviral drugs. Hepatitis C is also known as infusion hepatitis. It is caused by HCV, which is an RNA enveloped virus. It is chronic in nature. It is spread by blood or sexual contact. There is no vaccine available for this. लेकिन इसकी treatment में we have alpha interferons, and another obviously prevention would be to screen blood. Hepatitis D is delta hepatitis. It is the only hepatitis which is spread by a viroid. ठीक है? मतलब it doesn't have the protein coating. It just has the nucleic acid. And the only way this is contracted is अगर person के पास already hepatitis B हो. जब hepatitis B हो तो फिर hepatitis D contract हो सकता है. ठीक है? It is chronic in nature. And it can spread from blood या serum, ठीक है, and its prevention या treatment is the same as hepatitis B, because अगर आपके पास hepatitis B की vaccine हो तो फिर automatically आपको hepatitis D से भी basically immunity मिल जाएगी, because this won't exist without hepatitis B. Hepatitis E का जो major point है is कि it can be spread through pigs and orophaecal route, लेकिन this is like the defining basically feature. It has acute symptoms. इसका जो virus है, it is an RNA non-enveloped virus, and we do have a vaccine for this, and other than that just practice good hygiene. Some common plant viruses are rice dwarf virus, wound tumor virus, and we've studied tobacco mosaic virus. Let me just write that down. Okay, and another major one is cotton curl disease, which is caused by bigomo virus, which is transmitted by a white fly insect. ठीक है? तो अगर plant के ऊपर white fly आ जाए तो वो transmit कर सकती है, और इससे basically क्या cause होता है? Deep downward curling of the youngest leaf. जो लीफ है वो कर्ल करने शुरू हो जाता है, ठीक है, और फिर द लीफ डेवलप्स इन अ कप लाइक शेप। एंड द ट्रीटमेंट इज इंसेक्टिसाइड, बेसिकली प्लांट के ऊपर वाइट फ्लाई के अगेंस्ट कोई इंसेक्टिसाइड डाले ताकि ना हो, बेसिकली प्रिवेंशन ही की है। And that is it for this lecture. In the next lectures, we will discuss HIV, we will discuss bacteriophages, and again, special emphasis on this. Please read your books. There's many small points. सारे एक lecture में नहीं cover हो पाते, लेकिन this will be a great starting point for you. See you in the next lecture.